Extreme Measures is all about one thing: dealing with Odo's pending death. He, Kira, and Garrick have all returned to the station after the successful mission last time, but Bashir says that Odo was pretty far gone. Another week, 2 if he undergoes an experimental treatment that Bashir has cooked up, but that's it. There's just no real hope anymore, not unless they can stumble upon a cure. So right now Odo wants to talk to Kira about things. He wants her to go help Damar. The Cardassian resistance movement is going to need her expertise. And more to the point, he doesn't want to watch her go through with him what she had with Bareil at the end. Plus we saw in the ship what it looks like when a changeling dies, so this won't be a touching slipping off this mortal coil and drifting off to endless sleep. He's going to collapse in a pile of goo and then turn into blackened crystalline bits. And it is probably not the way he wants to be remembered, as something that needs to be vacuumed up by the cleaning staff. So she heads off with Garrick, but her departure naturally turns the discussion from the Breen weapon the chief looked over to Odo's condition. O'Brien decides they better tell Sisko what they've been doing regarding the Section 31 situation. Probably best if he knows that amoral secret agents might be crawling around his space station while he's trying to conduct a war. That could get in the way. They explain to him, and thereby catch the audience up on what's happening, about how Section 31 infected Odo in order to wipe out the Founders and commit genocide, and Bashir's plan to pretend that he's found the cure to try to lure someone from Section 31 here. Of course, Sisko points out the obvious flaw in this plan. Even if you capture an agent, how do you get the answer out of them?
I managed to get my hands on a Romulan memory scanner.
Why didn't you say you picked up a device of bottomless evil? That would have explained everything. Sisko's overall unimpressed with this plan, but isn't going to try to stop them. And besides, when somebody around here gets a crazy idea in their head, there's no stopping them anyway. Might as well not look like an impotent jerk by getting in the way. But the more Bashir thinks about the whole thing, the more the idea of Section 31 offends him. He calculates that it took a minimum of 73 people to infect Odo. Experts, security, high-ranking officials, all to infect an ally in the hopes that he could help them commit genocide before a state of war was even declared. He believes Section 31 has to be destroyed. But O'Brien thinks they should maybe set their sights a little lower and just try to cure Odo. Toppling a centuries-old secret organization is just going to have to go on the if we have time list. That night, Bashir awakens to discover Sloan in his quarters, watching him sleep. But, in a professional way. Bashir catches him in a force field, which doesn't impress Sloan, although learning that Bashir tricked him into coming here earns a bit of respect, although he doesn't expect anything good to come from it for Bashir. But Bashir has his own view. Now, you might be wondering why Bashir would shoot Sloan, given that, there's at least half a dozen ways that he could have incapacitated him that wouldn't involve a phaser. Well, it's important to remember that while those are good options, they have one serious deficiency. They don't allow Bashir to shoot Sloan. No further explanation needed. Sloan comes to lying on a bed with a restraining field, surprised that the White Hat Doctor has suddenly gone so far off the path of righteousness where he likes to hang out, and so ups the stakes by threatening O'Brien's family, a sign of desperation since Sloan doesn't operate in such a brute force way. The same reason why he would look specifically for the cure rather than setting off a bomb in Bashir's lab. He's also shocked by how Black Hat Bashir has suddenly become when he whips out the Romulan mind scanners to get the answers out of him, elevating him from misguided idealist to actual threat to the Federation, since Bashir would undermine Section 31's work, which Sloan sees as the bulwark between the Utopia and the cruel galaxy. He believes in it so strongly, he activates a suicide device in his brain, which Bashir manages to temporarily halt, but it's already caused brain damage. If you're thinking, why not just have Sloan personally cure Odo so he never gives up the formula and Bashir's motive for the cure is diminished, well, Sloan clearly is so certain that this disease is the only way to protect the Federation that he's willing to die. Any potential of Odo being able to pass on the cure the same way he passed on the disease is a risk too far for him. And Bashir, he has him dead to rights. He's not thinking he needs to compromise on the cure when he can just have it. And Sloan's not going to mention the suicide device because so far, this mission Bashir has outplayed him at every turn. Mentioning that jeopardizes Sloan's one secret advantage. If he mentioned it to try to coerce Bashir into compromising, he risks Bashir coming up with a way to disable it, and then he has no options left. The safest choice is to just activate the suicide device. Well, safest for the secret. Obviously, safe suicide device is a sign of a defective product. So Bashir has O'Brien whip up a device that will allow him to go into Sloan's mind and look around for the cure. O'Brien hears the full details of the plan and decides it's the stupidest thing in the history of stupid, and he definitely wants in on that. So they enter his mind, and they find themselves in a turbolift, taking a moment to remember that they're inside Sloan's head because this is sort of a dream thing, and you know how dreams are. When you're dreaming, you normally don't think, I'm dreaming, because that would distract you from the fact that you're Wonder Woman now and your breasts are made of ice cream. After a little adventure with the elevator, they arrive and find Sloan waiting for them, who greets them as friends, and when they explain they came for the cure, he's convinced to give it to them. Only it's complete technobabble. Actually, this time, the words he speaks are incomprehensible. Part of him doesn't want to share the cure, so they're going to have to let him do what he came to do first, which is to say goodbye to his loved ones.
Why Deep Space Nine?
Excuse me?
I'm just wondering why the inside of your head looks like our space station.
Budget, actually. Originally, this was going to be set on a planet where Section 31 was headquartered. Then it would become a surreal mindscape in order to save money, and that wasn't saving enough money, so now it's the station. They needed all that money for the big finale, after all, but it does make Extreme Measures feel quite a bit like Distant Voices, when Bashir was also in a mindscape that looked like the station. Anyway, Sloan has a chance to say his piece to them.
No tears, please. My death isn't a tragedy. It's a celebration.
Just like King Joffrey's. With all that out of the way, Sloan's wife pulls the cure out of her purse so Bashir and O'Brien can get on with things.
Thanks, Muffin. Here you go, Doctor. I'm sorry, Doctor, but I can't let you have that.
Luther Sloan, the first man to kill himself twice. While they pursue him deeper into his mind, Ezri and Sisko stop by to see the mad science at work. He calls for someone to come and give a medical assessment, but, well, I stand by my mad science diagnosis. Meanwhile, in the mind of Sloan, Bashir and O'Brien are stopped by a guard, who finally shoots Bashir, though technically Bashir shot Sloan first, so this is fair play. O'Brien jumps the guy, but gets shot too, and suggests that perhaps enough is enough, they should just get out. Only the effect of the injury his body thinks he has leaves Bashir too weak to initiate the sequence that would bring them out of it. That means that if Sloan dies, they likely will die with him, which is really not how O'Brien expected this morning to go. He wishes he'd left a note for Keiko to explain everything, although there's really no explanation needed.
She always said I liked you more than I liked her.
That's ridiculous.
Right.
Oh, maybe you do, a bit.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
What? Are you crazy? She's my wife. I love her.
Of course you love her. She's your wife.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, maybe you like me a bit more, that's all.
Julian, do you think now is really the best time to have this conversation?
I love my wife.
And I love Ezri. Passionately.
You do?
Yes.
Have you told her?
Not yet. But I will.
Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Oh, yeah? Huh. When?
When I'm ready. It's just that I like you a bit more. See? There, I've admitted it.
Are you drunk? You always have this conversation when you're drunk. They're finally distracted by a bright light, which they guess is the one that you see right before you die, but it motivates O'Brien to keep going, opening the way out for them. At least that's the assumption. If you wake up from death and see war's face, you better hope that you're still alive, or odds are you are royally screwed. Sloan's still dying, though, and despite Bashir's best efforts, he passes away. This, of course, means that Odo is screwed, but he takes the news well, which at least makes this more palatable. And really, arranging a kidnapping and going into the mind of a dying man is going above and beyond. You can't say Bashir's not a committed doctor. But when he goes back to reading A Tale of Two Cities, he discovers that the book starts over again at the point where Bashir had stopped reading it, because they never left Sloan's mind. He's trying to trick them, presumably because O'Brien had found the right door. Sure enough, there's Sloan and his crap lying all over the place. Spies should really be more tidy. I suppose Sloan being close to death is a valid excuse, though, but it does mean that Bashir and O'Brien have to sort through the piles of crap to try to find the cure. But there's other fascinating things in here, too, like the fact that there's a Section 31 agent in the former president's cabinet, or that they have activities on the Klingon homeworld. This is exactly what Bashir needs if he wants to bring them down. So even though O'Brien finds the cure, Bashir wants to keep poking around. Sloan keeps tempting him while O'Brien tries to get him to see what Sloan is doing. He's trying to keep Bashir distracted until he dies, taking Bashir and the cure with him. O'Brien finally gets through to him, and they make it out just in time. Or have they?
I should warn you. You may feel some discomfort.
If you mean it's going to be painful, just say so.
Yep, they're back. Only in real life would Odo be this surly to the man about to save his life. And it does indeed work, restoring Odo back to normal and saving him. Catching spies, dreamscaping, curing the uncurable, all in a day's work for a doctor. The post-episode follow-up. Annoying character goes to the guy who shot Julian and Miles. He may not have been real, but that's no excuse for shooting somebody. Final score for Extreme Measures is 6 out of 10. Sadler, as always, delivers a fine performance, and Meany and Siddig have wonderful chemistry, with some very well-written scenes. But the choice to do this basically as a bottle show robs the episode's primary plot of much substance. There's no sense of the unnatural place they are in, and being set on the station, or in the generic Starfleet quarters, makes it feel like just another day at the office. I also think basing the wake-up mechanism around Bashir having extra special control over his vitals was an error, akin to the way people would keep giving Superman more powers. It had to be in Bashir's hands because otherwise O'Brien could force them to leave, but a different means should have been used to allow Bashir to be the one to get them out. Falling back on his genetic enhancements was just a mistake. I like the way they explore the camaraderie that these two men have. They manage to avoid the whole bromance joke and just examine the fact that sometimes you can like your friend more than you like your mate, even if you are deeply in love with your mate and have no romantic feelings for your friend. It's not an uncommon situation after all. It comes down to connections because we don't look for the same things in a mate that we do in a friend. So the commonalities can lead to a connection that feels stronger because it's in a different form. Plus, a relationship brings different responsibilities to the table. It's a lot easier to hear that it's your turn to buy a round of drinks than it is to hear that it's your turn to do the dishes. I like the way they handle it, where the Chief's protests aren't of the "I'm totally not gay" vibe that they do in these situations. It's more like, "Don't you go telling me I love anyone more than my wife." The Bashir-O'Brien friendship has the moments like this that make it a friendship worth watching. So it is fitting to see this one last time as things prepare to close. But we're not there yet. Next week it's The Dogs of War.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
You spent more time with me.
We work together.
We have more in common.
Julian, you are beginning to annoy me.